Welcome everyone. This event is all about recognising and celebrating our heritage and what it means to us today. And so I too would like to acknowledge the Gadigal of the Eora Nation, the traditional custodians of this land, and pay my respects to their elders past and present. I would also like to extend my thanks to the Minister, who's not here yet but will be coming, and of course the Chair of the Heritage Council for their attendance, and acknowledge their ongoing contribution towards today's event and to heritage in New South Wales more generally. The other day I was driving back from the Trust's Riversdale property at Goulburn, and I was listening to an interview on the radio with the new Anglican Archbishop of Sydney. And the question was asked of him, what makes a good sermon? And anyone who knows me knows I do lots of things at the last minute, so I thought, oh, this could be helpful in preparing today's speech. I thought the first thing that the Archbishop said was very interesting. He said he was fortunate that he loved his topic. And I thought, well, I have that advantage as well. All my life I've loved old buildings, and I've had a career as an architect, and I've worked on them and managed to design them and repair them and understand them. And now in this role I get to talk about them and advocate for them. The second piece of advice was just as unhelpful really in preparing the speech, and he said that he was lucky his audience also liked his topic. And I thought, well, that's good because I'm preaching to converted here as well. So I think that the most important thing he left out for Simon as well was that you should keep them to 10 minutes as well. So with that in mind, let's talk about heritage. I think we all missed it last year when this event was rather suddenly cancelled. But in this age of COVID, we have in many areas of our lives undertaken a bit of a reassessment of our priorities. It's provided us a time to think and reflect, and in many people's cases, it's been a time to reassess the importance of our natural and built environment. Our parks have never been busier. Our sun-filled streets have never felt more important to us. It's also provided an opportunity for many businesses and organisations with a chance to take stock and reassess how they're going about things. We're reprioritising our public spaces, and the review of the Heritage Act that the Minister has announced affords us an opportunity to look at how we can best protect our heritage in the future. But one of the phrases that has stuck with me from this period has been the constant advice we've always seen on the television, particularly early on, where they're saying, we're listening to the experts. The first time I heard this, I thought, finally. But I suppose in heritage terms at least, this depends on what our experts are saying. I think we need to realise that the threats to our heritage are not new. There have always been ideas and proposals that will threaten important places. Sydney's population was approaching 4 million when Bob Carr famously declared it full in 2000. And the Department of Planning now projects that Greater Sydney's population will grow to approximately 6.6 million by 2036. No wonder our heritage is under constant pressure. And it makes it even more important for us to preserve it in a meaningful way for future generations. There's some comfort in the fact that people before us have led that way. In 1877 in London, the Society for the Protection of Ancient Buildings was established. Then, just as now, people were concerned by the proposals to undertake totally insensitive alterations and repairs to their ancient buildings. The founders of that society, who were led by the likes of Philip Webb and William Morris and John Ruskin, they were outraged by the defacement that had occurred at St Albans Cathedral in England. In the name of restoration, there was a defacement by the amateur architect, which is never a good starting point, Baron Grimthorpe. And it just happened to get worse because Baron Grimthorpe thought he would be the main contributor to the works as a donor. So much ancient fabric was removed, stone up to 1,000 years old, just to be improved with Baron Grimthorpe's imagined and improved version. It was a call to action. I love the fact that a key part of their response was to prepare a manifesto. They had the good writers and the socialist tendencies, and so out it came. The manifesto still guides the work of the SPAB to this day, and in many parts of it is fresh today as it was then. We think, said William Morris and Philip Webb, that if the present treatment of our ancient buildings be continued, our descendants will find them useless for study and chilling to enthusiasm. In the course of this double process of destruction and addition, the whole surface of the building is necessarily tampered with, so that the appearance of antiquity is taken away from such old parts of the fabric as are left, and there is no laying to rest in the spectator the suspicion of what may have been lost. In short, a feeble and lifeless forgery is the final result of all of this wasted labour. The past is the past, and we need to be careful in the way that we treat it. We need to respect that old building or that old tree. Stave off decay by daily care was the mantra of the SPAB. And that's a guideline that continues to make economic, environmental and conservation sense. Perhaps that's why I love the shortlisted project so much, for the repair of all the original windows in the Greenway flats at Kirribilli. It was just repairing windows. It wasn't throwing them all away to landfill and replacing them with some inferior aluminium thing that's easy for some bozo to insert. It was giving another 70 years of life to something that was perfectly serviceable. That project, to me, encapsulates exactly what those early conservationists were promoting all of those years ago. It's not about being trapped in time and never changing anything. It's about maintaining and preserving original, useful fabric. It's about recognising something that has value. Many of you might be sitting there thinking, well, in Australia, we have our own manifesto in the Borough Charter. But how often have we seen that document cited as the guiding force at the start of a heritage report by a consultant, only to read on and wonder where that guidance has led them at the end of that report? When the authors of that venerable charter wrote that new work should be discernible from old, I wonder whether they had that insensitively placed glass box in mind, or that adjacent tower as a backdrop to a small house. It's those controversial projects where we listen to the experts and where we all have a responsibility. For every horrible heritage outcome, more often than not, there is a heritage report that justifies it. Sure, let's have that discussion, for it's generally those things that are worth protecting that we find are worth arguing about. We need progress and we need creative thinking, but sometimes we also just need to say, no, what we have here is good and it's valuable. We should keep this. And to this room I say, sometimes as experts we need to give just that advice. And to the broader community, we need to listen to those experts. I don't think I've ever been as depressed in my whole life as when I was last in New York City and I was walking through Pennsylvania Street Station. Anyone who's been there knows the 9-foot-tall underground tunnels lined with acoustic ceiling panels. And then all of a sudden I came across it, the interpretation panel. It showed the original waiting room of the former Pennsylvania Street Station in all of its glory. That was an internal space that was 100 metres long. It was 46 metres tall. It was modelled on the baths of Diocletian in Rome. It was made of granite and marble and precious stones. It was all demolished in 1963 to make way for some air rights. As the architectural historian Vincent Scully noted at the time, one used to enter New York City like a god, and now we scurry in like rats. It was a tragedy. It was a galvanising moment for the US conservation movement, and Jacqueline Kennedy was a big part of that. But perhaps the editor of the New York Times at that time summed it up best when he said, "Any city gets what it wants, is willing to pay for and ultimately deserves." How fortunate for my generation that our own Queen Victoria building or the Mile Lakes did not suffer that same fate before I was even born. We simply take those things for granted now. But as they say, the price of victory is eternal vigilance. The baton has been passed. Maybe we are the designer, the assessor, the client, the National Trust, the public. We all have our role to play in Australian conservation. We are all responsible for shaping that pervading attitude that allows those things to happen. We can make preservation the norm and not the option. Every year, these awards show us the best there is in heritage. They show us how creative approaches to our heritage can be achieved, how we can adaptively reuse existing structures, how our historic buildings and cultural landscapes can inspire the best in contemporary design, how people can enjoy engaging with historic places and objects in meaningful ways. These projects, they set the standard, and I thank you all for your work towards them. They provide the best examples for others to follow. If these awards can help us change that attitude, then they will have achieved their goal. Maybe they could result in a little new manifesto for us here. I'm a bad poet, but here we go. Change will come, and so it should. For just because it's old doesn't mean it's good. So if it is broken, we could simply just mend it. But when it is good, we should vigorously defend it. Thank you.